Hi everyone. So this video is unique for two reasons. One, it is the first video that I'm making with my brand new Logitech camera. And I think it has better video, so I'm happy about that. Yay. It's also an interesting video because this, for those of you in HR, this is your very last topic that's going to be covered in this class, the last thing you need to know. Once you watch this video, you are done. And it's also one of my absolute favorite topics, which is the errors that people make when they do that, the errors that managers make when they do performance appraisals. Also, I should note, if you hear weird noises in the background, it is because I now have a more sensitive microphone and they're doing construction right outside my window. There's nothing I can do about that. So I apologize if you hear some weird noise, it's because of that. So now let's dive right into the topic. So as I said, we're discussing the appraisal errors that companies can make. And interestingly to me, the appraisal errors that managers often make when they're giving appraisals of their employees is often the same type of mistakes that I've seen teachers make with their classes, okay? And the type of errors that we're gonna look at here, the four types of errors we're gonna look at are central tendency error, the contrast error, the recency error, and what's known as the leniency severity error, okay? There are other errors. I'm only covering 4, okay? So let's start with the central tendency error. The central tendency error. The word central, as you know, means at the center. The word tendency, you have a tendency if you are more likely to do it. So in normal times, you're more likely to see Steve with a Coke than not with a Coke. That's tendency. You're tending to do something. And the word error, an error simply means mistake. And now my birds are back, so you're probably hearing birds. What the central tendency rating is doing is it's a manager who says, I'm going to give everybody an okay rating. Not high, not low. I'll just give everybody an okay rating. Think about the graphic rating scale that we've talked about before. The graphic rating scale is that 1 to 5. When you do your evaluations for your classes, you evaluate us on 1 to 5. And they ask you a whole bunch of questions, and you either give your teacher in your class 5s if you think it's great, or you give them 1s if you think it's horrible. Well, the central tendency error would be giving everybody 3s for everything, okay? Why might a manager give everybody 3s? Why might they do that? Well, the answer is they believe by giving everyone the same rating, maybe everyone will be okay with that. Because, you know, nobody gets a bad rating, nobody gets a good rating, just everybody gets okay. And that's a manager who's weak. He or she doesn't know who his good employees are or who his bad employees are. So the manager is just a weak manager. I've seen teachers basically feel like if I just give everybody a B or a C, they shouldn't complain too much. And again, those are weak teachers. Next up, the contrast error. This is of all the errors, this is the hardest one to explain, but I have a personal story that hopefully will make it easy to understand this. The contrast error is that if there is a group of people who are, if you have a group of people who are great, if you have a group of people who are awesome, then a person who's average is going to look like he's really bad. If you have a group of people who's really bad, then if you have a person who's just average, then that person's going to look awesome. So the personal story from my life. Years ago, many years ago, I was working in weather, and I had, I worked at several different weather offices, and I became the manager of a weather office that I was warned before I became the manager that this office has real problems. In other words, the people who are here are all bad people. Not bad as in, they're bad in that they don't know how to do their job. And so you're going to have a lot of problems when you take this office over, okay? I knew the former manager well, and I knew he was good, and he was like, I don't know what to do. I'm turning it over to you, Steve. I hope you have better luck than I did there. Good luck. And so I became the manager of this office, this weather office in Norfolk, Nebraska. And at that office, my predecessor, the guy before me, was right. Everybody there was incompetent and really weird. They were so weird. It was almost like it was a sitcom. Like you could do a TV show based on how weird these people are. Okay. There was one guy who was there who was simply average. Having managed many different offices before this, I know who's good, I know who's bad, and I know who's average. So this guy who was just average, being surrounded by people who are really bad, the guy who's just average, I wanted to hug him. I was like, thank you. Because just being average for me was like, wow, you are great. But I knew he wasn't. I knew if he worked in any other office, he would just be an average person. But when you compare him to the really bad workers that are there, then the person who's just average looks like a rock star, looks like they're awesome. And I've also seen the reverse happen when you're surrounded by, when you have a class that is super. So I've had some classes that have truly outstanding students. When you have truly outstanding students, then the student who's just average suddenly looks like, why aren't you getting it? Because all these people are getting it, okay? So the point is, the contrast error is real. I hope my explanation worked. The contrast error is real, and even knowing the contrast error myself, I sometimes find myself actually doing it. So yeah, I'm human, and I can make these errors as well. So the next type of error we're going to look at is what's called the leniency severity error. And this is one that I'm sure, this is an error that I am sure you as a student have encountered at one time or another. The leniency severity error is when somebody decides to be super nice. Just be nice to everyone. Nobody can be upset if you just be nice to everyone. Give everyone on the 1 to 5 scale, just give everyone a 5. Yay, that should make everyone happy. Why is that bad? Why is it bad to just give everyone a 5? It's bad because if you give everyone a 5, then the person who actually deserves to get a 5 will say to herself, why am I working so hard if the idiot across from me is also getting a 5? I worked hard to get a good rating. He isn't. Why is he getting the same rating that I'm getting? So that's bad. It lowers people's motivation. If you see that everybody's getting the same rating that you're getting, it lowers your motivation. Where I've seen that within teaching is I've seen teachers sometimes believe that, oh, if I just give everybody an A, if I give everybody really good grades, then they're all going to love me. And, you know, I've truly heard this from teachers. Well, you know, I'll just be extra nice. And when I'm extra nice, then people will love me more. And the students, I'll get good evaluations. Well, I have an answer to that. And here's my answer. At the last place I worked at, I knew my coworkers extremely well. It was a much smaller college, so we all knew each other very, very well. And I knew the teachers who gave, the instructors, the professors who gave super easy grades to make students like them. I know who they were, okay? And because I was a department chair, I was able to see evaluations. So I could see the evaluations that these people received. And the answer is, they got okay evaluations, certainly not bad, but you could tell students would write things like, this teacher is too easy. This teacher is whatever. So when a manager or a teacher tries to be too nice, they're trying to bribe, is the only word I can think of, people's respect. And in life, people respect you if you know the difference between who's a good employee and who's not a good employee. So the leniency error is very real, and it's a problem that many companies have. Not many companies, many managers have, okay? Now, the opposite, being too mean. Think about this one for a moment. Why would any manager choose to purposefully be too mean? And why is that a bad thing? So again, I have experience with this. I worked at a place where the manager was purposefully mean. The attitude of the manager was that nothing we did was good. This manager could not give a compliment to anybody. The belief was that by not being nice, somehow that will motivate us more. It doesn't work. Being too mean doesn't work. Being too mean doesn't work. Being too nice doesn't work. This is what's known as the leniency severity error. And as I said, you've probably seen both of these as a student. And that brings me to the last error we're going to talk about. This is what is known as the recency error. The recency error is when the manager only evaluates based on the most recent experience. So not based on, remember, evaluations are typically for a whole year. So usually when you receive an evaluation, it's your evaluation of how you've been working for the past year. And I have a story on this one too. So when I was your age, I was selling electronics, TVs. Let's see, what all did I sell? I sold cameras, TVs. I sold, and by the way, the cameras I sold, wow, this was late 1980s. You would pay the equivalent of 7,000 dirhams for a camera that shot video worse than the 100 dirham cell phone you can buy. So yeah, technology's come a long way. Anyhow, so my job was selling electronics, and this is the way I paid my way through college. I worked 20 hours a week selling electronics. I had a manager who, he was a good guy. I liked him. Dale was a great guy, but he didn't really like managing. So he's a good guy, but did not like managing. And so he knew our evaluations were going to be in the month of June. So every year in the month of June, we would have our evaluations. He didn't want to think about the evaluations the entire year. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to think about it. But then when May came, when the month of May came, he realized, oh, I have evaluations to do next month. So when he realized he had to do evaluations, then he'd come down and start watching us And we knew he actually had a clipboard out and he's taking notes. So we knew we're being watched. So guess what? In the month of May, we were the most amazing employees you could possibly imagine. We greeted customers when they came in. Hello, how are you? What can I do for you today? I spent my time cleaning the shelves, making sure everything's clean, making sure everything is front-faced, which means you pull everything forward. All of us were wonderful model employees for the month of May because we knew that our evaluation was coming up. Then we get our evaluation, and we knew that he didn't care after that. So then, because I was selling PlayStation, believe it or not, PlayStation exists. Was it PlayStation or was it Sega? Anyhow, we had video games that we were selling. So after the evaluation was over, then I go back to playing video games during my free time. So yeah, so I'm telling stories of where I'm not such a good guy, and I'm putting it on YouTube for the whole world to see. Why am I doing this? I don't know. Anyhow, that is the recency error. Dale was a great manager, but 11 months out of the year, he didn't think about us employees at all. He didn't think about us in terms of evaluation. He was a good guy. He helped in other ways, but he didn't think about evaluations at all. So when he had to do the evaluation, all he could think about was how hard we worked in the month of May. And so we all worked hard in the month of May. I have one last story. One last story for you guys. So I'm grateful that I had to work while I was going to college. It taught me a lot of job skills and so forth that when I sat in your seat and took human resources, I had already had a job. At 16, I was teaching swimming lessons and working as a lifeguard. At 17, I got the job selling electronics. So I had work experience that when I was taking the human resources class, I had some work experience. I know most of you do not have work experience, and I honestly wish you did. I'm happy for you. I guess that most of you have enough money that you don't have to, but there is value in having that. So that's lesson one. But that wasn't my last story. My last story is this. So at that same place where Dale was our manager, the two most important criteria they care about, because I'm selling electronics, the two most important things they cared about were, what were your sales per hour? Okay? Sales per hour measures how good a salesperson you are. And the other thing they worry about was selling service contracts. How good are you at selling the extended warranties, whatever that they made back then? They made a lot of money on those. I think they still do, but those are the two things they worried about. Everything else you do, lower priority. What we care about most is what is your sales per hour and the service contracts. So my boss gave me my evaluation once, and I received the lowest evaluation of anyone in the department. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't, Steve, you're going to get fired. It was simply that I knew what everybody else got for evaluations, and I received the lowest evaluation, and I was angry. I wrote up a 2-page explanation. How on earth can I be the lowest person here? I was number 1 in sales per hour, and I was number 2 in service contracts. Of the 20 employees, I was number 1 and number 2. And these are the most important things that we're told they're the most important things. And if I'm number 1 and number 2, why on earth am I the lowest rated person? And he started arguing with me. Well, and finally he just gave up. And he said, Steve, you're going to college right now, right? And I said, yes. He knew I was going to college. Whatever. He said, do you see yourself working at Montgomery Ward? That was the name of the store. Do you see yourself working at Montgomery Ward in 10 years? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, why do you care? And I was like, what do you mean? He said, why do you care what you get on your evaluation? I gave you the lowest evaluation because you're not planning to work here for 10 years. So I gave you the lowest evaluation because you're going to get a degree, you're going to go on to graduate school, you're going to go on to do bigger things. Your bad evaluation here will have no impact on your life whatsoever. So let it go. And that was an eye-opening moment for me. Yeah. So that's a story I want to end on, because I hope it gives you some insight. I fully understand why Dale gave me the lowest evaluation. I'm not offended at all. Does not bother me. In fact, I actually consider it a life lesson, that I was worried about something that had no impact on my life. And sometimes when I'm dealing with students who get so worked up about their grades, I want to tell them that story, because they get worked up on things. Grades matter. I'm not saying grades don't matter, but when students get so worked up that I need an A- in this class, if I get a B+, the world ends. No, the world doesn't end. So anyhow, if you've reached this point, you have watched, I don't even know, probably a couple of hours worth of videos from me now. This is not the way I want to teach. I want to be back in the classroom, but I hope this works. And I also hope, and that you'll be honest with me, every video I've done, I'm getting better. So I believe in my heart, this is truly the best video I've done so far. You can let me know. Take care.